talk a little bit about enlightenment before I get into my talk. It has light in it, for one thing. Maybe I need to explain it because I think there's probably all sorts of definitions. If I asked you what enlightenment was, a bunch of you would have different ideas of what it is. So let me just tell you what my idea is, not that it has to be yours, but it'll help you with my talk, what I'm going to say. Enlightenment for me is that experience of my reality getting bigger. I'm still here, it's still true, but it's in a context that's larger than what I had normally had. And in that larger context, this seems more whole. In the larger context, it seems to be okay. Like I'm like, oh, did that explain it? Well, how many of you have had that? Woo! It seems to be fleeting, but I've noticed that every time I've had one of those experiences, they've changed me at depth. I can't go back to the way that I have been. And I use spiritual practices to get to that place because it does shift the way that I function in the world, because I have, even for a moment, a bigger experience of the world. And therefore, I shift the way I show up in the world. Now, that for me is enlightenment. You can have your own definition, but I would love for us to have more of that. Well, what I know is, I've read it and I now know it, is that enlightenment is never a process of acquisition. You don't get something so that you're finally enlightened. You don't finally find the key. You can't come to a place like this and check under your seats because one of you will have enlightenment. You know, it's like, and you reach in, I'm the lucky one, It's not like that. You can't find it someplace. And I know a lot of people seek, and a lot of people go to find, and a lot of people pilgrim to places, and they'll sit for long periods of time. And I know that all of that, it sounds like it's a seeking, but it's never a seeking, it's a releasing. The process is always more about letting go than it is about acquiring. So even in the process of a pilgrimage, it's not to find an answer, but usually through the pilgrimage, you let some things go, and therefore what's left is light. Light. I believe, this is my personal experience, is that if we could truly see each other, we would see each other as light, energy in form. We came from light, we come from stardust, if we just want to talk about material reality. In the Big Bang, we're still part of that. I wasn't around, that I remember. So even from the material aspect of things, there was a poof, and we're part of that poof. So we are that. If energy can show up as light, and energy and matter are interchangeable if you have the right formula, according to Einstein, then so too are we light. We are energy slowed down so that we could show up. We're light. I read this in the New Testament again in Gospel according to John, which I think, I'm not going to get into what I think it is, but it's not normal. Anybody that studies the Bible says that gospel's not normal. And that doesn't tell any Christmas story. In fact, Mark doesn't either. The Christmas stories were added later, and I get into that, but that's a whole different thing. But John says, in the beginning, light entered into the earth, and this is the Aramaic translation. Light entered into the earth, and the darkness comprehended it not, and the darkness could not overcome the light. Now, if we could interpret it as a meaning that this was about Jesus, but it's not about Jesus, it's about us. It's about all of us. We all enter in as light, and our own habits of forgetfulness don't comprehend that light. But the light cannot be overcome by our uncomprehension. Just because we don't realize who we are doesn't mean we're not that. Does that make sense? That we are pure light, and we could be enlightened anytime, but we are not always, but oftentimes dealing with the things that keep us from knowing that we're light. We're busy. We're such good people. A lot of people out there are busy fixing themselves. And I want to give you a gift. Stop it. For at least a day. Try it on, see how it feels. And then you can always go back to it. How many of you have books and books and books and tapes and CDs and then programs? And that's the darkness trying to fix itself when we're already light. We've always been light, we'll always be light. Now I want to get to children, because the talk title is Let the Children Lead Us, and it will be about light and it will be about enlightenment. So how will the children lead us into enlightenment? Well, we could spend some time with them and you'd be amazed, but let's go with another child that's always with you, your child, your inner child. When I say, I had this wonderful experience with Sharon Ramey, because she shared that she had really wanted to have grandchildren and her daughter wasn't cooperating. So her daughter's best friend said, you can adopt my kids. And so she's now a grandparent. And she brought her 2 grandchildren that she has, that she takes to all the things that I would love to go to if I had a child. But I don't go to them because I'm too adult. Don't the children lead us? I want to talk about this inner experience, because I believe that all the stories that are told over and over again are always told over and over again because they are about an inner experience. And there's 2 stories about light that show up during this time of the year. There were probably more, but we don't know. I don't know of really good winter solstice stories. I don't know about them because maybe they were never written down and then handed down through posterity. But we have 2 stories that were written down. And one is the story of the birth of a man named Jesus. And there was a star when he was born, a light. And then there's also the other story, which is the story of Hanukkah, which is also about bringing light in. It's our soul saying, there's some light in here. Let's turn our attention to light. The darkest time of the year, let's turn our attention to light. Let's go for the light. And supposedly, the ancient mystics and sages said that this time of the year, the veil between our normal thinking and our mystical reality is very thin. So stories show up and say, come this way. So I want to come this way to that child within. Now, many of you have heard about doing inner child work, right? If you at least heard about it, even though you won't fess up to doing it. How many of you have heard of doing inner child work? And usually it's the wounded child that you're working with, right? How many of you know that others have wounded children inside of them? Others have wounded children. Well, I want to suggest that if we have a wounded child, we also have a wonder child. Each and every one of us has to have a wonder child because we are still light. And the darkness may not comprehend it, but we're still light. And that child is that light, and that power, and that innocence, and that creativity, and that ability to adapt and learn and expand and grow so quickly. So much of the stuff that we love about children is still in us, and it is the wonder child. And now back to the story of Jesus. That wonder child, that child that was born, became according to the story, a savior. Well, guess what? That story's not about then, and it's not about a group of people, because God doesn't play favorites. That story's about us. So there is a wonder child within us that will be our savior. That when we comprehend this light, according to the gospel, according to Thomas, that light will save us. When we let that light out, it will save us. Now, I don't know what you need to be saved from, but I have a few things I could use. And so, we say this and we say this and we say this, but it's hard to leap into this crisis that I'm in. I am my own resolution. Isn't it hard when you're in crisis to go, I'm it, I'm it, I'm it. I know I'm it. She said I was it. I'm not it. Hater. Don't like God anyway. I mean, how many of you go that? Gene Houston said it is very difficult for the finite to leap into the absolute. You know what will get us there? A good story. Stories get us there. Stories take us from this experience into that experience. So no matter what I'm experiencing, there is something within me that can lift me and move me. Okay, how's the story go? How's the story go? So according to the story, a child was born, and he was named Emmanuel, God with us. And you know what? Children do sort of believe that, don't they? Don't children kind of know? Aren't they kind of godly? Aren't they pure? Aren't they light? Aren't they wonderful, even when they're making messes? I mean, isn't it just absolutely fabulous that we can love them so much? And they're pulling at your earrings and the other stuff on you. And they're just so delightful because they are lightful. And we see that and we appreciate it and we long for that. And that's why we love seeing this innocence up here, because there's a part of us, the wonder child, that goes, yep, that's me. Wake up, wake up, wake up. That's me. And the light can heal all the wounds. See, a lot of us work on our wounds when we should just be letting our light shine, because shining light dissipates all shadows and dissipates all and heals all wounds. So instead of going backwards and healing a wound, how about just owning our light? That's what this story's about. And then it's a miracle. And we didn't have to work so hard. But this is the season of miracles. This is the time when we can believe in miracles. People talk about miracles at this time. People watch those stupid movies over and over again. You want miracles. Don't you? How many of you know you've watched it so many times you could mouth the words? That's because the soul goes, tell me about the miracles again. I got to remember when everything was a miracle. When I would cry and I'd get food, and that was a miracle. I'd cry and they cleaned my diaper, and it was a miracle. No, really, isn't there a part of you that knows that and wants that all the time? And the light can do anything. So the other story about the light cleansing anything, whether it's our soul or the wounds that we think we got from someplace, is in the story of Hanukkah. Because the temple had been defiled. What's a temple? It's a building. Any building in the Bible is your body. You are the temple of the living Spirit. And some of you feel like you've been defiled. How many of you, it's okay because I won't ask you questions. How many of you feel like something happened to you that so shifted you, you could never find your innocence again? And it wasn't even your fault. Well, that's what a whole bunch of people felt one time. You know what it took? 8 days of light. 8 days of light, and they called that place pure. What's light do? It didn't sweep. It didn't clean up the blood from the sacrifices they'd put on the altar. But they believed that 8 days of light could make a place holy again. Light makes you holy again. And the light's in you. The light is you. It's always been you. I'm just here to talk about it for a moment, and then we're going to go backwards in time, and you're going to find the light. Because if you don't cultivate that light, if you want to go searching for something, search for your own light. The bookstore is going to hate me. They won't buy any books anymore. I need to tell you just a story before we go into meditation, and this is my own experience of this. My own experience of light finally healing everything. I too had a wounded child. Well, it's more like a wounded teenager, which is worse, because teenagers want to drive the car, and so wounded teenagers. You know, how many of you know that it wasn't your fault, it was your wounded teenager? It wasn't my fault. It was just, I was going crazy, and I don't know why, but I think it was, I could point to that time. There was a time, any time I've ever been really, really upset, I could point to the time. It was a pivotal time. It's like everything was wrapped around that time. And I can't even say that it was a really bad time. I'm going to tell you what happened. It's not that bad. I was not abused. I wasn't, forgotten. I mean, left alone, that kid's going to be in therapy forever. Anyway, it was no big deal, except it was a big deal. I was maybe 11, 12, 13. I don't remember, but I remember the house we were living in, and I wanted my mother's attention, and my mother didn't give me attention. She just wasn't able to give me attention at that time. And so I remember my mother sitting here, my grandmother sitting here, and me trying to get attention. Hello? Look at me. I can get attention. But not from them. They were deep in conversation in their own stuff. Mom. And I would say most of the stuff that I have had to deal with in my adult life came from that time of thinking that I was somehow not worthy of attention. Worthy of. Well, I have done, for those of you that have done these, I've done fear to faith work on this. I've done what happened wisdom tree. I've done therapy, and I've done NLP sessions. And it all pivoted around this dining room table. And I guess I was finally ready for it to end because I went to Peru, and I just went back one more time. In fact, actually, somebody asked me to just go backward. When was the first time? I was like, oh, here we go. And there I was, once again. But there was a difference this time. For some reason, I have been doing some deeper inner work, and I just knew that no matter what was going on here, I was still light. I used another word. I was the Christ. And the Christ, me, loved me. Because it doesn't matter what they did if I can't do it for myself. And if you can't do it for yourself, you're going to want everybody else to do it, and it won't matter. See, it doesn't matter that you give me attention. I wanted it from my mother. Right? How many of you pulled that stuff on people? Well, somehow I gave myself so much attention to myself in this moment, in this thing, that all of a sudden I took it in, and the little girl was the light. And I saw things so totally differently. And I've said this before, but it was just such a moment. I was so filled with light that it was an aha experience. Aha, enlightenment. Here, this was still true. I was still close to the table trying to reach for my mother, and my mother was still getting, leave me alone. It was still the truth, but it was so much bigger. And the enlightenment was, I came here for her. Because she'd never had attention. And either had my grandmother. The sins of the mothers had been visited upon the daughter, and I was the one to break the pattern. But see, that wasn't made up. That's what light does. Light shines on everything, but it shines so brightly that you see it from a much bigger point of view. That's what light does. That's enlightenment. My mother still hadn't paid attention to me, but it didn't matter because I was there for her. Big difference. I'm glad I had that experience because I'll probably lose my mother this year sometime. I'm glad I have that this is all gone. I will not be at a memorial for her thinking, you know what, I wish she'd paid some attention to me. It doesn't matter. I don't care. because I can do this for myself. That's what light does. So I'd love for you to have that experience. Are you up for it? So take a deep breath. This is totally voluntary, by the way. But wouldn't it be great to shift something forever? So just relax. And some of you were here the last 2 weeks, and in the last 2 weeks, many people were activating their spiritual gifts, their spiritual powers that are given to us when we incarnated. We didn't incarnate unequipped. We incarnated, and Spirit gave us 12 things that we could call upon, that all we have to do is say, power on, and they do. And for this little meditation we're going to do, 2 qualities are going to be important. The first one is faith, because faith is the substance of things we hope for, and if you hope for light, we have to have faith that light can happen. And the next thing is imagination. Because we're going to go on a journey, and it's going to be difficult if you can't imagine it. And you can imagine it because you have the power of imagination. So the way to do that, if you choose, is I'm going to just start by rubbing the top of my head, right where the crown chakra is. And that just reminds me that I'm connected to something greater than myself. Now, I imagine, I invite you to do so as well, to imagine that there is light coming out from my fingers into my head, right at the crown chakra, and going straight down, hitting the pineal gland. And if you don't know where the pineal gland is, don't worry, your body does. Don't worry. But if you're really type A, then it's where your eyebrows are, go straight back, and where the 2 meet, those 2 intersections are the pineal gland. And then half an inch below that is the pituitary gland. The pineal gland is this operating center for faith, and just imagine it as a bright, bright, bright white light. Tiny, like a pinprick, but so bright, it's amazing. And then half an inch below that is the pituitary gland, and imagine that as a rainbow of colors. It doesn't even stay one color. It just rotates from purple to red to orange to yellow to green to blue. It just rotates, and so you can't really keep your finger on it because that's what imagination does. It's alive. So these two power centers are activated, and once they're activated, once you feel like there's light going on in your head, simply raise your hand. Okay. Now I'd like you to let your imagination and your faith and the Spirit of God that is always with you, let's call her Sophia today. Sophia, wisdom, is going to take you on a journey. And imagine that you're moving backwards. Backwards, backwards, until you get to your early 20s. And when you get to your early 20s, raise your hand. See what you're doing. Notice what you're thinking. And if you're really brave, look to see what you're wearing. Oh, man. And now allow yourself to go back into your teens. Let's try 16. Go to 16. And now move backwards to 11. And now backwards to 10. And remember how fun it was that you were now double digits. And the celebration of that. Now move back. Move back to about 5. Move to 3. Gentlemen, go out into the hallway, okay? Thank you. Now move to about the earliest memory you have. The earliest memory I have is watching a black and white TV at my aunt's house on Saturday morning and cartoons. What's your earliest memory? Earliest memory. And notice in the earliest memory, you still believe that you're so cool. And now take a step back. Let the Holy Spirit take you to that place that you were before you incarnated. Before you said, oh, I'm going to go to Earth. I love Earth. Can't wait to go to Earth. I'm going to have a body. It's going to be solid. It's going to be fun. I get to know hot. I need to go cold. Oh, man. Oh, wow. I'm going to eat things. I'm going to poop. Oh, man. This is so fun. Oh. And notice how light you are. How innocent. How excited. How beautiful. How absolutely majestic. You are that sweet, beautiful, fabulous light. And you still are. Look inside your body now and see the light that you are. See that light. Entertain that light. And notice that when you entertain the light, the shadows of experience have no power. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light that you are, you can let it shine. This great light that we are, we can let it shine. We can shine. And all of the woundedness is healed, and the unskilled behavior is removed, and the memories transformed. They're still there, but they can have a whole new meaning. I am so grateful that the light of the living presence of God is now so present within each and every person who wants it. If you want it, say yes. Because the world has always been waiting for that yes. God has waited for that yes to reveal itself as it has always been. Totally pure, totally intelligent, totally wise, totally powerful. This light of ours, we can let it shine. And we will shine and shine and shine. And if that is your intention for this moment, leading up to the New Year's, that for 8 days you will shine, you will be made so pure that enlightenment will be yours. Not perhaps all the time, but in moments, in flashes, in realizations, you will know that you have whatever you need inside of you to create the world that you want. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.